So after all this talk on technology addiction, we're going to look at some stats, some statistics as of 2024. Our devices, smartphones, tablets, laptops are constant companions. They keep us connected, informed, and entertained. But what happens when this convenience tips into dependence? Technology addiction is a growing concern that affects people of all ages. If you find yourself constantly checking your phone, neglecting sleep to binge watch shows, or struggling to disconnect, you're not alone. Here are some alarming statistics that showcase the depth to which technology addiction has taken over our lives. Top technology addiction statistics. Research has found that over 35% of people have an internet addiction. 31% of American adults say that they're online almost constantly. 85% of Americans go online daily. Internet addiction has significantly increased since the pandemic. Teens get an average of 8 hours per day of screen time. This has definitely shot up during lockdowns. I mentioned it in another video how children who normally wouldn't have had access to the internet, or at least as much internet, once lockdowns were put in place, it forced everyone to be in their homes and be on the internet. Everyone was sucked into this alternate reality on social media. Children who, like I said, otherwise wouldn't have had access now have access because they have school laptops provided by their parents. Even though they're supposed to be on there doing work, a lot of times they do end up going on social media. Children speak and talk to each other. You know, have you been to this website, that website? Now it's become an issue. And so even when the lockdowns were lifted, the damage was done. All of these kids are now addicted to the internet. And, you know, Allah knows best if it's intentional. I know a lot of times when people want to get away with something, they play dumb. This seems to work all the time. And so this was a big problem. And now we see an influx of depression among children, suicide among children. And it wasn't due so much to the lockdowns per se, having to stay indoors. It was the extreme change in their lifestyle, going from a routine to stuck in the home. It came from being locked in with parents who have no patience, maybe abusive parents. And it came from these new addictions to probably more sugar, but definitely internet. And every addiction turns to depression eventually. So unfortunately, a lot of the children are now addicted to the internet because of lockdowns. And teens get an average of 8 hours per day of screen time. That's totally believable because of the lockdowns. How common is technology addiction? Across the globe, we're becoming increasingly dependent on our electronic devices and internet connection. Rates of all types of technology addictions are on the rise. Nowadays, pretty much, even homeless people have smartphones. Having this in everyone's hands gets everyone plugged into the alternate reality. Like I mention all the time, I have to do that because what I call like us pips are pre-internet people. We can see the contrast and the difference before the internet and after the internet. And so we see all of these changes. We can see within our children who were raised before the internet or during when it first started, but wasn't really a thing, to our children who were raised during a time of social media and memes and all of these things, where social media is the primary source of the internet. That and haram websites, they make up most of the internet. So we can see that, and it's all across the world, and everyone's being given a phone, and it's just probably going to get worse if people don't become more self-aware or start to really care. Over 50% of Americans believe they're addicted to their phones. One study found that around 35% of the population has internet addiction. Up to 60% of teens show signs of cell phone addiction. At least 10% of American social media users are addicted to it. Over 60 million people across the globe struggle with video game addiction. Between 7 and 10% of people who watch online or on websites are addicted to it. Now, of course, we don't know where they get these stats from, but it is a good indication of the prevalence of all of these different types of addiction on the internet. Gaming addiction can even be tied to mobile games that have in-app purchases that are built on gambling algorithms. A lot of parents end up spending a lot of money buying their kids in-game purchases. There's one game I play called Marvel Strike Force, and it's been found that they do use a gambling algorithm for some of their in-game purchases. So we have to be really mindful of that. Watch what our kids are doing. They could become gambling addicts without us even knowing. So you definitely want to get involved in what your kids are doing. Don't want to just give them phones and tablets iPads as a babysitter because you're going to suffer the consequences. And if the parents are also addicted, this just compounds the problem even more. Who is addicted to technology? Overall, it's our world's young people who are facing technology addictions at the highest rates, although people of all ages are impacted. And this is because young people do not have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, which is needed, which is our executive brain, which is needed to control impulsivity. They're more prone to drugs, internet, gaming, anything, all of these pleasure-derived activities and substances, sugar, all of these things. Children are much more at risk because they don't have the capacity to control themselves. That's what us parents are for. We're there to act as their executive brain, to say, hey, nope, can't do that. Nope, can't eat that. Nope, you're going to have to wait. And so for sure, they're going to be upset and they're going to rebel because they're not capable, physically not capable of having that same discipline that you might have. We have to do it for them. And then, of course, once they grow up and their brains develop after or around 25 years of age, they can look back and say, oh, I see now why my parents used to do that. I see why my mom or my dad didn't let me do that. Then they understand, and then they can try to pass that on to their children. And then, of course, they'll probably go through the same thing. But this is just the way life goes. This is the way it is. That's what parents are for. And then, of course, once we grow up as adults, we need something above us to keep us in line and tell us what's right or wrong. And that's where Alhamdulillah Islam comes in beautifully. Our deen is there to act as all of our parent, and so to speak. So very important to understand that this is going to impact kids more than anything. And we as parents need to be mindful. We need to become more computer literate and understand how these things work, because otherwise our kids are just going to be taken over behind the scenes, and then you're not going to be able to tell them otherwise. They're going to see you as the enemy. For example, 80% of Gen Z check their phones within 5 minutes of receiving a notification. Over half of teens say they spend too much time on their phones. The majority of teens check their devices as soon as they wake up. Around 40% of young adults aged 18 to 22 say they're addicted to social media. 16 to 29-year-olds are over twice as likely to be addicted to video games as older adults. This has a lot to do with FOMO, the fear of missing out. I did a video on this last week. This is a big part of checking the phone constantly. You don't want to miss out. You don't even, and the children become so self-conscious. They think that, oh, if I don't respond to my friend within 5 minutes, what are they going to think? Or maybe they're going to tell me something I'm going to miss out, and I'm not going to be on the, the inside joke, which is what memes are. It's what social media is. This is the allure of social media, is that you don't want to feel like you're missing out. You want to be a part of those inside jokes, those memes. That's what memes are. So this is a big deal. This is, and of course, as we get older, this doesn't bother us so much. We don't, our friends, even our best friends text. We're like, oh yeah, I can get back to them as soon as I can, or as soon as possible. But we don't have that impressionable, lack of self-control that the youth have, that we all had when we were young. Males, especially teen and young adult males, are also more vulnerable to many types of technology addiction. For example, in one study, almost 50% of male participants were found to be addicted to their phones, compared to around 35% of female participants. Young men are also the group most vulnerable to haram website addiction and video game addiction. And that's because, the haram websites, it's because men are visual. This is why women cover. Women are more into emotions, and they tend to read novels and books, like haram books. And so this is why a lot of times women want to hear you say nice things to them. And, this is just the way we're built and programmed as humans. So men are visual, women are more on the reading, they're more emotion. And alhamdulillah for Islam, like I said, Islam, the deen, is our guide. So it takes all of this into consideration. The effects of technology addiction. Technology can bring a lot of benefits to our lives, but when it comes to an addiction, it can be incredibly harmful to health and well-being, just like any other addiction. Research has found that technology addiction can cause serious consequences for mental and physical health, including muscle pain, sleep disturbances, and a higher risk for mental health issues. And this comes from an overabundance and abuse of dopamine. Because the brain is trying to keep a balance of the pleasure and pain, if you're constantly on the side of pleasure, the brain is trying desperately to bring about a balance. So what it has to do is it has to implement pain. And so as it goes to the side of pain, but as a slingshot effect, a major rebound effect, this is what we term withdrawal. So you too much pleasure, you crash, you're in a state of withdrawal, state of pain, which can even manifest as actual physical pain. And they say that over 70% of the people that go to the hospital with pain have they can't diagnose or figure out where it's coming from. But a lot of this is due to stress, it's due to dopamine crash, and it's due to addiction. So people with internet addiction are 2.2 times more likely to have sleep problems than people who don't. 68% of young adults with smartphone addiction sleep poorly compared to 57% of people without addiction. A lot of this has to do with also nutrition. When you have an addiction, you're not eating right. You're not even hardly eating. You may be stuck in your room, isolating yourself, just scrolling or playing video games. You're not going to get proper nutrition. And because, like I said, the addiction hijacks your brain and making you think that the substance or the behavior, let's say a video game, is needed for survival. So, of course, you're going to pick that. And it's just going to create less and less of a need for food and drink. Around 30% of those with phone addiction live in an unhealthy lifestyle with more fast food and less exercise. Over 1 in 3 people report that they've experienced daytime sleepiness due to late night phone use. This goes with any addiction. You will start to put everything else to the side. Relationships, family, proper nutrition, exercise, finances. A lot of times will even take a hit, especially if it's spending addiction. This is just all part of addiction. And the internet makes it more difficult because of the ease of access. The supply creates the demand. Having the phone on us 24 hours a day makes it even more of a problem. Whereas even with an illicit drug, you have to go out and get it. You have to go find it. I mean, who knows? Uber Eats will probably deliver this one day. I don't know. But for now, you have to kind of put in some work to get an illicit drug or even to get alcohol. And so even if you want to buy it, even if it gets delivered, you got to go on the app and you got to wait. But with a phone, it's right there. Put something in between you and that phone. Don't have it on you, especially in the house. Don't even use it in the house. Over 30% of people with smartphone addiction also experience symptoms of depression, because all addictions lead to depression. Tens who spend over 4 hours on their phones daily are significantly more likely to have suicidal thoughts. This comes from your brain trying to create this balance of the pleasure and pain. If you're too much on the side of pleasure, you're going to crash heavily on the side of pain. And that pain eventually gets so bad that the child could experience cutting just so they can feel something. Because when you cut, even though it's painful, the brain will create serotonin to try to counter it to the side of pleasure. And so they can even get pleasure in cutting themselves. So a lot of this can really get out of hand, and a lot of it has to do with having too much time on the phone. And if you're letting your children, your small toddlers and little kids be on the phone for hours at a time, you are really putting your child at a big disadvantage. You're going to see it big time when they get older. You're going to wish you could have gone back and never gave them a phone or a tablet. So really take this seriously. Hopefully, inshallah, you spread it to other brothers and sisters, because this is a big problem, something we should not take lightly, because maybe even we ourselves are addicted, and we just want to give our kids the phone and give them something so that they're off to the side while we engage in our own addictions. 1 in 3 people say that social media has an overall negative effect on their mental health. Instagram and other image-based social media platforms are significantly linked with body dysmorphia, kids comparing themselves to others. This has always been the case. There used to be magazines back when I was growing up, music videos, all this kind of stuff, movie stars. Everybody wants to try to be a certain way. But the difference is there's a difference between the gap between an average teenager and a celebrity is so huge that they may not be that pressed to be like that celebrity to the extent to where they start having body dysmorphia. But if it's somebody who looks like an average Joe or Jane like you, someone who's just a person, and they're pushing and peddling fake this, fake that, but they think it's real, they're going to want to start being like that. So it's much more probable to become like someone who looks like you, or, who's not a celebrity, as opposed to someone who's a celebrity. So we have to keep that in mind, that people find people who are similar to them and start trying to emulate them and be like them. And this can lead to body dysmorphia. People use social media excessively as teens are more likely to be suicidal as adults. This is all part of the addiction. People who watched haram websites in the past 24 hours are almost twice as likely to report feeling lonely as people who do not watch haram websites. This can also have to do with your private, obviously you're not doing this. Well, hopefully you're not doing this in public, but usually people do this in private when they don't think anyone's watching. Allah is watching, of course, but when you think no one's watching, a person can spend hours looking at haram websites. So this can make you feel more and more alone because of the time you're spending alone watching it. All forms of technology addiction, including social media, smartphone, and online haram websites, are linked with higher rates of depression and anxiety. To better understand your own technology use and assess potential addiction risks, consider taking this comprehensive technology addiction test. And then here are all the sources. So, yeah, I keep pushing on this internet addiction and social media addiction because it's a huge problem. And because I see so many people with their small toddlers, even 1-year-olds. I don't even know if that's a baby still. People still have given these kids their phones, giving them iPads. It's not the same as TV. Too much television is not good as well, but social media and phones are far worse because of the access, the supply. Easy access to thousands, millions of websites, videos, games, you name it, at your fingertips. The supply creates the demand. So hopefully, share in the comments if you see this video. Not too many people are seeing my videos. I'm too new. But if you do, share in the comments if you're going through any struggles, if you're a parent or if you're a teen going through any problems, share your experience, share your wisdom, so that we can all learn. We're all here together to learn. I'm not here as somebody saying, hey, this is how you do it. This is how you fix your life, because I'm going through all these struggles myself. I'm just here to share with you as somebody who's older and somebody who has lived part of his life before the internet and now living the other half of his life, or 2/3 of his life, after the internet. So inshallah, subscribe, like, do all the things to try to help push this info out there. And until next time, may Allah reward you for being curious, and keep tying your camel. Assalamu alaikum.